Hello and welcome to this week's review on My Hero Academia, with this week reviewing the episode titled Wrench It Open, Izuku Midoriya, and we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the positives and the headline positives, all the big things I'm discussing over the course of this review. I loved the artwork and the animation, I liked the emotional stakes, and I enjoyed the memory merging thing that we got towards the latter half of the episode. This week, Midoriya tries to pass on his quirk, but struggles to do so due to Tomura's fingers, which he likens to grime or fingernails. And if you need help removing any grime or cleaning your fingernails, then use Puddingwell soap. Now with more Primrose. This week we are shifting back to typical form with these reviews by talking about the animation first because, well, I enjoyed it, and generally speaking, this is stuff that I tend to have less to say, but this week not so much, because I did love the animation here and I think that it was just spectacular. It is frequently great this week. I will admit that I wasn't too keen on the whole PNG of Asui and Mineta floating around that thought tunnel thing, but hey, there's been worse examples of that in anime in recent weeks, but nonetheless, I did enjoy and love the animation that we got this week. This week wasn't as action heavy as in prior episodes, so there's less to really talk about in that regard. However, what action we did get here, for me, was a lot more climactic and impactful, because you were saving the best animation for the moments that were most impactful. The just twisted, contorted expression of pain when Tomura gets smacked in the guts by Midoriya was just brilliant. Just these twists of near cinematic, if not exceeding cinematic quality of animation we get in this episode is great, and it's something that we've seen almost consistently up until this point in this series, where in the more serious, the more impactful moments, so we're getting a lot more of the serious and impactful animation. And, of course, this isn't to say that I didn't like stuff that wasn't connected to the action stuff. As I will be discussing, I will talk more about the memory stuff later on, because I have a lot to say on that stuff. But the animation was at its most impactful when it was supposed to be the most impactful. It's like they saved all their energy, all their tokens, all their coinage, all their power for those particular moments. So when you have the moments that are of the most emotional weight behind them, they have the most behind them on maybe more of a thematic level or more of an even just an action level, it's those moments that end up having the most put into them. The connecting tissue stuff, not so much. That feels almost standard, but of a high standard though, nonetheless, that we've seen of this series thus far. And it all just ends up going in many regards just to underline just how grim and how desperate the situation is getting for many of our characters, particularly with Midoriya, but we'll get onto that in just a moment. The whole thrust of this episode, from an action point of view, from a this is the goal of the episode point of view, is that Midoriya must transfer his quirk to Tomura, so that the vestiges of the past quirk users can break inside of him and cause a rumpus, so to speak. And this week, we see our hero looking more sinister and horrifying than we've seen in him a while. Hell, for a good chunk of this episode, he looks more villainous and monstrous than our monstrous villain. I mean, my god. It's something that is noticed by Momo and Denki when they're watching the footage of him, and you get words to the effect of, oh, he's gone dark again, or he's taken on that dark persona that we saw for them, maybe a few days ago, for us, maybe a season or so ago. And that dark, twisted visage that he creates is something that is just so horrifying and twisted that darkness, that dark persona is referred to and reinforced as being a dark thing, a negative thing, when we get into Tomura's memories and we see that dark reflection of Midoriya, that shadowy, dark green, dark turquoise apparition that appears within the dream itself. And I think that is just brilliant, as it ends up showing just what the world really sees of him when we see him going into the dark Deku state, as some people call it, for want of a better phrasing. I mean, he isn't, I would argue that he's not quite into dark Deku territory, because I don't think he's there mentally, as when he was in that state a couple seasons ago, he was definitely in a very dangerous place, and things could have gone down a very dark direction, even if the heroes won it, but it still underlines this willingness that he has within himself to just throw himself into harm's way, throw himself into a disaster, in a way which is self-destructive. I mean, this is an episode where he spends most of it holding himself together with the Black Whip. I mean, he's not literally holding himself together to stop himself falling apart or trying to keep his guts or something inside of him, but he is practically having to use Black Whip to move himself around like a marionette. That's how broken and damaged and worn down that he really is. And just that apparition, just how it has such a control over him, how he has all these parts of Black Whip just coming off of his body like tendrils. It just makes him look just this horrifying creation. And then when he loses all but one of his quirks, it's then he starts to look normal. Quirks have twisted him into something he isn't, and it isn't something that's going to win the fight for him. He has to be true to himself to save the day. He has to fight this as a human, not a hero. He has to fight trauma and pain, not with strength, but with humanity. And I like that transition of it, that you see him breaking out of the Black Whip as it's even before it's passed on, as he becomes more of himself and he becomes the true hero that he is, because it's not superpowers that are going to win this, it's him. It's him and it's who he is, because you don't need powers to be a hero. The core idea, the crux and the thesis of this series started to come back into focus as we get towards the end of this series, and is something that is reinforced throughout the episode, where we have the moments where we see the characters who have had their life enriched to some way, shape or form by Midoriya coming into it and either inspiring them, saving them, or save them from themselves. We are at this point in the story starting to pivot away from the superhero action material into something that feels more emotionally driven. I'm sure that we'll still get some more superhero action heroics by the end of all of this. I'm sure that will be a big fight action sequence, because as much as I might maybe deep down prefer otherwise, I don't think this is all just going to be episodes are just trying to reach out to Tomura on an emotional level. There is going to have to need to be some big fight sequence to round this off, or to round the penultimate act of all of this off, but nonetheless, we are going deep into the memories of Tomura, for the first time for Midoriya, but for a second time for us, with Midoriya and Nana What's-Her-Face seeing all of this for the first time and seeing how Tomura became the monster that he did. And I'm interested to see how they handle this, because we already know it as an audience. They can't really just replay it all, so we're probably going to see aspects that we didn't see before, and we're going to see interpreted in a different way. I would like it all to be a little bit more abstract, but that's something we'll discuss later on. But this is a sequence, this is an episode that is starting to pivot us away from the physical stakes and start us to better establish the emotional stakes. That's not to say that the emotional stakes haven't been established at all, more so that it's reinforcing them, and it's trying to pivot us away from just seeing this as being, well, this is a shonen anime, and as such it needs a shonen anime solution, with our hero going beyond, a level beyond, they're going plus, ultra, ultra, or something along those lines. Midori is going to push himself as far as he can do as a human being to save the day, and his friends are seeing the true lengths of that. If this wasn't the end of the series, and hey, if this wasn't this kind of series, it would have been great to have a moment where his friends confront him on this, because this is the second time they'll have seen him go to this extent and to these lengths. Yes, they will have seen him pushing his body to its limits in the past, but they will have always interpreted that as being, oh, he doesn't have full control of his quirk, this isn't because of him. Now they are seeing the strain, the physical pressure that he will put on his own body. So having an episode or so in a hypothetical, like, continuation of this, when you just sit down to him and say, look, you can't keep doing this to yourself, regardless of whether he's got quirks or not, because even if he doesn't have quirks, I imagine they'll find some way of him being a hero, even if he has to wear, like, a super suit or something. They'll still say to him, you can't push yourself to these extents. That's how we probably end up translating with him as it goes forward, or it would do. But of course, that isn't what we're going, because this is the end of this series, and it isn't that kind of series where they'd confront him on that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, the fact you have this moment where his friends are looking at this and going, oh god, he's really going down a dark path again, he's doing reckless things again, I like. And it shows that there is this element to all of that, which they're uncomfortable with, which is something I will touch upon in a little bit more detail in just a moment. We're seeing Midoriya starting to see Tomura's side of things, his perspective. The memory stuff, again, we'll talk about that in a moment. We have the bit with Eri, where she wants to help Midoriya, despite the risks that come with that. She wants to go out there and to save him, to help him in this fight, and hey, maybe in some hypothetical scenario, she will be the thing to help twist things along for Midoriya, but, let's address the elephant in the room here. One, well, it's two elephants, really. It's practically a fucking zoo at this point, but one, if Tomura got a hold of her power, well, then everybody's bollocked. Two, even if she could be there, it's probably not a good idea that she is there because she'd just be an easy target. And three, well, if things go south with Midoriya, she's probably the last hope in taking down Tomura, so they kind of need her to one side for now. Just make sure that she's kept well away from everybody so that they have a plan B if everything goes sideways. Now, as I say, this isn't establishing emotional stakes, more so it's reinforcing them. It's adding more to the moment. It's giving us a chance to connect with other characters we haven't seen that much of. We get the moment with Lady Nagant on the rooftop, reflecting upon the impact and the influence that Midoriya had on her. And we have similar moments of that throughout this episode. And a great aspect of this is the moment we see Yaoyorozu and Denki watching the footage on their phone, watching the stream on their phone of what's going down, and you have that moment, a brilliant moment where Denki's watching this footage, and he feels guilty that he can't do the comic book, manga, cartoon, anime friend thing of going, oh boy, don't worry, our buddy Deku, he'll do it, he's got this, which is something that I just think is a great admission for him. Like, it almost borders on the meta, because that's what a character like him would do. It's almost like that's the default state for characters like that. You see in all other anime and manga and comic books and cartoons, you'll have the friend character who will stand on the sidelines and cheer on their friend as they're battling the bad guy, like, oh boy, you've really got this one, go Goku, we know you can do it. And this is a moment where they can't do that. It's almost meta in that sense that this is a character that would totally should do this. That they should be the one that's giving the pep talk to their friends when they're feeling, oh, maybe he hasn't got this. But he can't, and I think that's amazing for this character. I mean, yeah, there's better things they could do with this character, but the fact that you have the friend character, the spunky, come on guys, we're going to solve this, and don't worry, our friend Deku's going to do this, can't do that. And it's not because they dislike them, it's just this sense of foreboding and depression within them that they can't bring themselves to do it. And I think that's an amazing little just moment in this episode, and they don't dwell on it. Like, you could easily see an idea like that being built out and expanded upon in a different series, in a different medium, but they don't. It's just this small moment of character where one of the characters that we've seen be almost universally cheerful throughout all of this, apart from moments where it's done for comical effect, now thinking, maybe we can't do this, I think is just great. I know it's really miserable, but I do like that fact. It does add something into this, just this like crack of doubt in the minds of our heroes, because let's be honest, throughout everything else in the episode, as far as other people's points of view, as far as what's going on with Midoriya is concerned, it's a lot of just cheering him on. It's a case of, oh, don't worry, he can do it. So to have one character, not a random character that you met like a season ago or a couple episodes ago or what have you, thinking, maybe he hasn't got this. It's a character that he's known at this point for almost a year, and it's a character that's been part of this series for most of it, and they're just stood there thinking, maybe he can't do it. And that's great to me. That's just a little just crack in all of this I just enjoy. And there is another moment within all of that, a small moment I will admit, and it's where he's talking about, oh, I should be the guy in the comic book who, he's cheering on his friend, but I can't do that. And Momo, she says that she doesn't really get the reference. I know that this week the subtitles have been a bit wonky again, so the exact wording of it might not be exact, and then I'm remembering it. But she says something along the lines of she doesn't really get the reference because she isn't really into boys' comics or boys' manga or anything like that, but that's the kind of moment you would see. Like, I know that, yeah, sure, she doesn't read manga, she probably doesn't watch that much anime, but it's a moment you see in a lot of pop culture anyway. Regardless of whether it's Japanese, American, European, British, German, whatever, you'll have that moment where the hero is fighting the bad guy in whatever context is in that series, and you'll have a character on the sideline either literally cheering them on, or in their head, their little thought space memory thing going, yeah, they've got it. And she doesn't have that reference, and not a major thing, but it does add a little something extra to her character, that she doesn't really have the pop culture basis for being a hero. Oh, sure, she might have seen heroes on even then, she will have seen superheroes on TV as part of news broadcasts or what have you, but still, there would be those moments in it where you'd have people going, oh, you can do it, whoever you are, you can save the day. It'd be their sidekick or a citizen or just someone on the sideline saying, you can do it, Endeavour, you can save the day, you can do it, All Man. And she just doesn't have that point of reference. That's another small thing, but an interesting thing. So it's never going to be expanded upon, but still an interesting aspect nonetheless. The fact that we have a hero that doesn't have total unwavering faith in the hero is just interesting to me. And apologise if I've gone on with that. But even then, I don't even think it's like a doubt in them per se, but more of a feeling of, okay, maybe he'll win, but at what cost? In what state is he going to be in? Because they're both seeing this footage of him being just smashed about left, right, and centre. There's a lot to talk about here, and I'm getting lost in a particular moment, so I'll move on and just say that I really, and this is probably the big takeaway of the episode, the thing that I like the most, is the memory sharing idea. Whilst the visuals aren't always as I'd have liked them, I still like the idea. I would rather that the imagery that we see here was more abstract and strange, because we've seen stuff like that before. There is a moment that's original to the anime that isn't in the manga from about a season or two ago, where we see Tomura in that thought space realm thing, where you got like bits of a broken up, damaged city floating about him with these echoes of his family, and just leaning more into those kind of visuals I think would be better. Maybe that's something we'll see more of, but nonetheless, I suppose that's more of a me thing. And I do like the fact that these characters are appearing in this almost like holograms, where the colour is slightly off. Like there's almost like this blue or grey-blue hue to everybody, and you can kind of see it flickering out and being disrupted. It's almost like the idea of them is being broken up and disrupted in some kind of way. And again, this is a more of a me thing, because I suppose I'd like the artwork for these bits to be a little bit more grotty and miserable, because I think the visuals here are a little bit too bright, and it creates too much of a juxtaposition with the grimmer imagery that we've had outside of this place. And there is a part of me that feels that in some regards it's almost, some aspects of it I should say, are happening almost for the sake of it, like the appearance of Stain and Redrestro and Overhaul. I don't really get that visually, why we need that, particularly at that particular moment. I think that's a bit that could be saved, but that's I could talk about that in a moment. But conceptually, I do like this. There is an aspect of it that does feel like it's a bit forced. That this is a way that they're using it to, oh, we need Midoriya to see the other side. We need Midoriya to see that there's an other side to villains, that they're not all monsters, they're not all, I'm going to steal the diamond, or what have you, the cartoony, comic booky kind of thing that he might well have been brought up on. And he's seeing that villains are human beings that have been pushed to extraordinary circumstances. Something that might feel like, yeah, no shit to most of us who are watching it, but bearing in mind, this is a kid that's only about 14, 15 years old. He's not really used to that point of view. And without making a whole new storyline where he learns this organically, this is the best option that you have, and it's a way that does feel like it is keeping with the nature of the universe and doesn't feel like it's coming out of left field, because we've had similar kind of stuff like this happen before with the two of these characters. So it's not totally out of left field. It makes sense in the context of this story, I just think there's aspects of it that could be handled better. Though I suppose as we go forward and we see more of this imagery might change, become a lot more nightmarish and creepy and weird. And the big thing I will take away from it, well, maybe not the big thing, but it's an aspect I do like, is that this whole scenario, this thought, this memory sharing thing, is something that it explains why Midoriya knows so much about some of the other characters. Not all of them. I suppose with some of them it's a case of he just talked to them and they told him their story. But this is an episode, this is a series, this is a story that's told from the point of view of Midoriya. So it always felt weird to me that he knew about what the villains were doing and what other characters were doing when he have no idea why it's happening. Again, you can, with some of the characters, particularly given where they've turned right now, you can accept it as being, oh, they told them the story. It's a story that he heard. As far as the stuff with Tomura is concerned, now we have a reason why, because they've shared the memories. He'll probably retain some of these ideas, some of these memories, even after he probably ends up losing his quirk. Which is a kind of dark idea when you think about it, that after all this time, once all this is said and done, he's going to have the memories and echoes of the memories of a serial killer in his head. Which gets wow, that's an idea. I'm not going to lead on that too far, because that feels like an idea for a different thing, but nonetheless, it does go in a very mechanical way of explaining how he knows so much about the villains, bearing in mind he spent next to no time with them. There are other aspects of it that don't quite pan out, but you can easily explain that away by just talking to other people. But with all that said, and I'll just also create desperation. I do like the desperation in this episode. Not going to lean on that too far because we are getting into the latter half of this review. And I'll say that let's get into the negatives. Now, the only issue that I have in a more of a material sense, more in an actual kind of sense, is the stuff with the memory mixing. Again, I think that the visuals could have been stronger. But there is just this aspect of it that, yeah, it works for what it is. It works well. I think the visuals could have been better, but I think this is more of a matter of taste. The appearance by all Overhaul and all the other past villains felt forced. It feels like if you're going to have that happening, it feels like it should come later on. Like, there's a moment where Midoriya is trying to reach out to Tomura, and now these characters reappear. Or they reappear and they're just some kind of strange, morphed, infused version of it. Because you have that visual of Stain turning into Redestro, and then Overhaul pops out of the side of Redestro's head, and imagining this being done in a more organic way, where they're just kind of morphing and flexing and turning into each other. But here it's just done as a hologram thing, which is kind of lame. It's not bad, it isn't bad, but I think it's just an execution thing. But we are so early into the execution of this that, hey, a lot of the issues that I have right now are probably going to get solved as we go forward. But nonetheless, let us get into the overview and say that I think this is a great episode. I think this is fantastic. I really do love this, where this is going. It is a pain in the backside because I have to wait a week for this. I'm not binge watching it or anything because I really want to know how. I want to see more of this. I want to see how it's going to pan out, if not visually. Like, in the back of my head, I got an idea where this is going. I just want to see the visuals of it. I want to see how it's put together in just a literal animation way. Yes, there's going to be part of me that would rather it was a little bit more abstract, but nonetheless, that's a different strokes or different folks thing. Well, let's send on now. Let's get into Comment Corner. It's time for Comment Corner, reading comments from the previous video and an extra one. Got a comment from the previous video from Big X1 who says, I enjoyed this week's episode. I'm looking forward to seeing the final fight between Izuku and Tomura animated. Thank you for your comment. I would just point out just quickly that YouTube being YouTube, there's a chance that people may leave comments on videos and it just doesn't notify me. Usually I'll end up finding them because I'll double check to make sure. But there are times it just won't notify me. They've stopped giving me emails telling me that I've got a neat comment on a video, so that's why my replies might be late recently. And I got another comment. Now, this comes from a previous video, but I still want to point out because it did make me smile. This comes from Pick Vegeta, who says, "Awesome video, love the Mystery Science Theater of 3000 reference." This is from the video with One For All, getting the backstory and history on him. Just made me smile because, you know, I do enjoy Mystery Science Theater 3000. Thank you all for your comments, thank you all for your interest, thank you all for the subscribers we've been getting recently. Would be nice to hit 170 by the end of the year, but I'm not holding out much hope for that. But nonetheless, thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!